Assalamualaikum dear aimers. Hope so you all are doing well. Today the topic of our discussion is dark reactions. And whenever students study this topic, their face also becomes dark like this. But I assure you that I'll try my best to make the topic simplest for you. So let's start the topic. So firstly, I have divided the definition of dark reactions into some components. The first point is that dark reactions do not require light energy directly. Directly means that dark reaction only require the products which are synthesized by the light energy, which are ATP and NADPH, but they don't require light directly. Second point is that they can take place in the absence of light. The only point over here is that only ATP and NADPH, these both products must be available. Light is not necessary for the dark reactions. Third point is that dark reactions always occur in a cyclic manner. Light reactions can take place into two patterns. First is non-cyclic and second is cyclic. But dark reactions always occur in a cyclic pattern. The next point is that they are catalyzed by respective enzyme. Every step of dark reaction is catalyzed by the enzymes, and those enzymes are present in stroma. Next point is that in dark reactions, carbon is fixed and is reduced. I told you in the very first lecture in general concept of light and dark reactions that what happens that with the help of light energy, water breaks. The hydrogen from the water is transferred to NADPH, and hydrogen from NADPH, as we call NADPH as reducing power, the hydrogen from NADPH is transferred to carbon dioxide. So addition of hydrogen into carbon dioxide is reduction. So that addition of hydrogen into carbon dioxide takes place in dark reactions. That's why we say that carbon is fixed and reduced. The next point is that the product of dark reaction is a sugar, which means the product is a carbohydrate. Okay, got it? Now, we have assigned different names to dark reactions. First name is very obvious light independent reactions. Second name is energy conservation reactions because the chemical energy stored in ATP and NADPH is now transferred or conserved into carbohydrate. There is no energy conversion. While in case of light reactions, there was energy conversion from light energy into chemical energy. The next point is they are called as Kelvin cycle because they were discovered by Melvin Kelvin. Okay, so it's the name of scientist. And the last point is that they are called as C3 pathway because the first stable product, remember the stable product, not the ultimate or not the net gain. Okay, the first stable product formed in the dark reactions contain 3 carbons. That's why it is called as C3 pathway. Do remember the dark reactions were discovered by Melvin Kelvin and his colleagues at the University of California, and Kelvin was also awarded Nobel Prize in 1961 for his discovery. Got it? Now, we will look at the reactants and products of dark reactions. What are the reactants? The most important reactant for the dark reaction is carbon dioxide, then ATP and then NADPH. Carbon dioxide is obtained from air and ATP and NADPH are obtained from light reactions. What are the products? The product is a triose. Do remember that the product of dark reaction is not glucose or a hexose. It is always a triose, which is 3 carbon compound. Okay, and the product is also water. Water was used as a reactant in the light reactions for the process of photolysis, and it is produced as a product in dark reactions. That is why we say that there is no net yield of water. I also explained this point in a very detailed manner in the very first video, general concept of light and dark reactions. So please firstly check out that video and then come to this lecture. Okay, so these are the reactants and products for the dark reactions. Now, where do the dark reactions take place? So, do remember that dark reactions take place in the stroma of the chloroplast, while light reactions take place on grana or thylakoid membrane. Now, we will discuss some terms which will be used in dark reactions. The first term is the difference between bisphosphate and biphosphate. So, see here that there are 2 carbon atoms, carbon number 1 and 2. If the phosphate group is attached to the same carbon, then it is called as biphosphate. Like this is carbon number 1. Both of the phosphates are attached to carbon number 1. So it is called as biphosphate. While if the phosphate groups are attached to different carbons, two phosphate groups are attached to two different carbons, then it is called as bisphosphate. Like one phosphate is attached to carbon number 1 and the second phosphate is attached to the carbon number 2. That's why it is called as bisphosphate. Got it? Now, we will study the components or the reactants which will be used in the dark reactions and also the products. Okay, firstly I'll give you the detail of their structure and then it will be easy to understand the diagram of dark reactions. The first reactant is ribose bisphosphate. Okay, now what is ribose bisphosphate? Do remember that ribose, like you studied ribose and ribose, this ribose is a carbohydrate in nature. Ribose is also carbohydrate in nature. The difference is that ribose is an aldo sugar and ribose is a keto sugar. So this ribose is carbohydrate in nature. Second point is that this ribose bisphosphate contains 5 carbon atoms. The third point is that ribose bisphosphate. Now here the word is bisphosphate. It means the phosphate groups are attached to two different carbons. On which carbon phosphate groups are attached? On carbon number 1 and on carbon number 5 of ribose bisphosphate, two phosphate groups are attached. You can see the structure. As I mentioned that ribose bisphosphate is a 5 carbon carbohydrate. So 5 carbons are present over here. It is 1,5 phosphate groups. So phosphate group is attached to carbon number 1 and phosphate group is attached to carbon number 5. And do remember it is a bisphosphate. It is not bi because phosphate is attached to two different carbons. Okay. So one more point about ribose bisphosphate is that it is a carbon dioxide acceptor, which means that this ribose bisphosphate adds carbon dioxide into itself and then makes another product. That's why it is called as carbon dioxide acceptor. Now, how will you remember ribose bisphosphate? You will remember as 1,5-ribose bisphosphate. Got it? Now, the second the second component over here is rubisco. Do remember that this rubisco is called as ribose bisphosphate carboxylase. Ribose, RU, BI means bisphosphate and CO means carboxylase. It is the full form of rubisco. Next point is that it is enzyme in nature. Do remember that ribose bisphosphate is carbohydrate in nature and contains 5 carbon, while rubisco is an enzyme in nature and enzyme means it is protein in nature. The next point is that it is the most abundant protein in chloroplast. Okay, and you all know that enzymes are always present in stroma of chloroplast, so it is also present in stroma. So it is the most abundant protein in chloroplast and it is also called as the most abundant protein on earth. Okay, so do remember these two MCQs, that most abundant protein in chloroplast or on earth is rubisco. Now, the next component over here is phosphoglyceric acid. Now, what is phosphoglyceric acid? Phosphoglyceric acid is written as PGA. P means phospho, G means glyceric and A means acid. And it is also called as phosphoglycerate and is written as PG. As you can call acetic acid as acetate. Okay, acid can always be called as end at ate, like acetic acid, acetate. Similarly, phosphoglyceric acid can be called as phosphoglycerate. The difference over here will be the abbreviation. It is called as PGA and it is written as only PG. Got it? Now, do remember, it is obvious from the name that it is acid in nature and it contains 3 carbon. Phosphoglyceric acid contains 3 carbon and it contains only 1 phosphate group on the 3rd carbon. Look at the structure over here. That phosphoglyceric acid contains 3 carbon atoms, 1, 2 and 3, and the phosphate group is only attached to 3rd carbon. That's why it is called as 3-phosphoglyceric acid or 3-phosphoglycerate. So how many components have we studied? Ribose bisphosphate, which was a carbohydrate, 3 carbon carbohydrate, and 1 and 5 carbon contain phosphate groups. The second was rubisco, which was enzyme in nature, and third is phosphoglyceric acid, which is acid in nature and phosphate group is present on 3rd carbon. Now, Do remember that we called Calvin cycle as C3 pathway because the first stable compound formed in Calvin cycle was 3-carbon compound. So that 3-carbon compound is phosphoglyceric acid. As you can see that it contains 3 carbons. Got it? Now the next component in the dark cycles is 1,3-bisphosphoglyceric acid. Now 1,3-bisphosphoglyceric acid is exactly same to that of phosphoglyceric acid, except that it contains 2 phosphate groups on carbon number 1 and on carbon number 3. Now look at its detail that it is bisphosphoglyceric acid. It means phosphate groups are present on different carbons, and that carbons are carbon number 1 and carbon number 3. It is also called as phosphoglycerate because it is same acid. So it can also be called as bisphosphoglycerate. The third point is that it is also acid in nature. The next point is it also contains 3 carbon like that of phosphoglyceric acid, and it contains 1 phosphate on first carbon and 1 phosphate on third carbon. Like you can see the diagram over here that this portion is exactly phosphoglyceric acid. Only what happens over here is that the phosphate is attached to carbon number first, so it becomes 1,3-bisphosphoglyceric acid or 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate. Okay, you write it as this way. Now the next component is phosphoglyceraldehyde. Now this is aldehyde. That was glyceric acid and now this is aldehyde in nature. So it is called as phosphoglyceraldehyde, and we write phosphoglyceric acid as PGA while we write phosphoglyceraldehyde as PGAL. AL means aldehyde. So please focus on the abbreviations that are so important. Okay, so AL means phosphoglyceraldehyde. Now it can also be called as glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and is abbreviated as G3P. It is carbohydrate in nature. As it is mentioned aldehyde, so it is carbohydrate in nature. It is 3-carbon compound, so it can be called as triose. And only 1 phosphate is present on the third carbon of phosphoglyceraldehyde. Like this way. There are 3 carbon atoms and only 1 phosphate group is attached to phosphoglyceraldehyde. Now the structure of phosphoglyceraldehyde and phosphoglyceric acid is exactly same. The difference over here is phosphoglyceric acid is acid in nature while phosphoglyceraldehyde is carbohydrate in nature. So it can be written as 3-phosphoglyceraldehyde or glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, and it is basically the product of dark reactions. It is the net gain of dark reactions. So do remember, first component was 1,5-ribulose bisphosphate. The second component was phosphoglyceric acid or phosphoglycerate or 3-phosphoglycerate because phosphate group was present on third carbon. The next component was 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate because 2 phosphate groups were present on carbon number 1 and carbon number 3. The next component is phosphoglyceraldehyde or glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate because the phosphate group is present on third carbon. The one who is a beginner may find these names difficult, but once you will learn these names again and again, and when you will listen to the lecture again and again, then it will be easy for you.